Somewhere in Britain right now, a nan is spreading dripping on white bread, and her grandchildren have absolutely no idea what she is doing. Between the wars and well into the 1970s, the sandwich was not a meal deal in a plastic triangle. It was survival between two slices. Some of these will make your mouth water, some will make you question everything. And number one was so beloved that grown men still go quiet when they talk about it. Let's begin the countdown with number 25. Number 25, the salad cream sandwich, stood as proof that flavor could be conjured from a single jar. Housewives spread thick white bread with margarine, then a generous layer of Heinz salad cream, sharp, tangy, and unmistakably British. Sometimes a leaf of limp lettuce joined it. Often, it did not. In the early 1950s, a jar cost around 1 shilling and stretched across dozens of teas, making it the cheapest way to make plain bread taste of something. Children came home from school to find these waiting under a tea towel, the vinegar tang cutting through the soft crumb. Oral histories recall fathers insisting salad cream belonged on everything, while mothers rationed the jar to last the week. When mayonnaise arrived in the 1980s, marketed as sophisticated and continental, salad cream was suddenly branded common. The sandwich that had fed a generation quietly disappeared, remembered now only by those who know that tang meant home. Number 24. The sugar butty was the treat that cost almost nothing and meant almost everything. Mothers buttered a slice of white bread, sprinkled it with granulated sugar, folded it over, and pressed it flat so the crystals stuck fast. That was it. That was the pudding. In homes where sweets were a Saturday luxury and a bar of chocolate cost more than the family could spare, the sugar butty was how children learned what celebration tasted like. The crunch of sugar against soft bread, the butter turning the crystals slightly golden, the way you licked the stray grains from the plate. Diaries from the 1950s record children being handed a sugar butty as a reward for running errands or bringing in the coal. Dentists campaigned against it. Parents grew prosperous enough to buy proper biscuits. And the sugar butty vanished, surviving only in the memories of those who once thought it was the finest thing on earth. Number 23, the mashed banana sandwich, brought a taste of the exotic to post-war tea tables. Bananas had vanished entirely during the war, and when the ships returned in 1946, children who had never seen one reportedly tried to eat them, skin and all. By the 1950s, mothers mashed ripe bananas with a fork, sometimes with a sprinkle of sugar, and spread the paste thick between buttered white bread. The result was soft, sweet, and faintly perfumed, a sandwich that felt like luxury, even when bananas cost just a few pence a pound. Children carried them to school, wrapped in grease-proof paper, the bread slightly soggy by dinner time and somehow better for it. Oral histories recall the smell of ripe banana filling the kitchen and the argument over whether sugar was necessary or vulgar. Today, a banana is a snack eaten whole at a desk. The sandwich, with all its ceremony, has simply faded away. Number 22, the fish paste sandwich, ruled the British picnic for half a century. Those tiny glass jars of Shipham's paste, salmon, crab, or the mysterious blend simply labelled fish, sat in every larder in the land. A single jar, costing around sixpence in the mid-1950s, would stretch across a whole loaf if you spread it thin enough, and mothers always spread it thin. The taste was intensely savoury, salty, and faintly seaside, a concentrated hit of flavour on otherwise plain bread. These sandwiches appeared at every christening, every funeral, every works outing, cut into neat triangles with the crusts left on. Children pressed their noses to the jar, half fascinated and half appalled. But supermarkets had little patience for tiny jars with old-fashioned labels, and as fresh fish counters and chilled sandwiches arrived, the paste retreated to the bottom shelf. The empty jars, famously reused for paste sandwiches at parties, now belong to another Briton. Number 21, the sandwich spread sandwich, was tea time in a jar for millions of British families. Heinz sandwich spread, that pale yellow mixture of chopped vegetables in salad cream, looked like nothing on earth and tasted like childhood. Launched between the wars, by the 1960s it sat in larders across the country, ready to rescue any tea when the cupboard ran bare. Mothers spread it straight from the jar onto buttered bread, the crunch of pickled vegetables giving texture that plain paste never could. Children either loved it fiercely or refused to touch it, and there was no middle ground. Office workers carried sandwich spread sandwiches in Tupperware through the 1970s, the tang of vinegar escaping every time the lid came off. But as chilled cabinets filled with coronation chicken and prawn mayonnaise, the humble jar began to look like the past. It clings to shelves even now, but the daily ritual has gone. Number 20. The beetroot sandwich. Stained fingers, plates, and memories in equal measure. Housewives sliced beetroot from the jar, pickled in sharp malt vinegar, and layered it between thick buttered bread, watching the crimson juice bleed instantly into the white crumb. By the time the sandwich reached the table, it had turned a shocking pink, and by the time it reached a school lunchbox, it had gone entirely purple and slightly soft. In the 1950s, beetroot was one of the cheapest vegetables in Britain, grown in nearly every allotment and pickled in nearly every kitchen. The sandwich cost pennies and delivered a sharp, sweet, earthy hit that woke up the plainest tea. Children complained about the sogginess. Fathers ate them with cold meat and swore by them. Today, beetroot has been rebranded as a superfood, but the pink sandwich has quietly vanished. Number 19. The cold sausage sandwich turned yesterday's tea into today's small triumph. When sausages were cooked, and by 1962 the average Briton ate them nearly every week, a few were always held back deliberately, left to cool overnight in the larder. The next day, they were split lengthways and laid on thick buttered bread with a stripe of brown sauce or a smear of mustard. Something happened to a sausage overnight that no fresh one could match. The fat set, the seasoning deepened, and the texture turned dense and satisfying. Working men carried cold sausage sandwiches to building sites and factory floors, wrapped in grease-proof paper and eaten with black tea from a flask. Children begged for them on long car journeys. Oral histories recall the quiet ritual of raiding the larder, hoping a cold sausage had survived the night. Fridges full of ready meals ended the habit, and the deliberate leftover sausage became a lost art. Number 18. The Marmite and lettuce sandwich divided households with all the fury the little brown jar could muster. Mothers scraped Marmite thin across buttered bread, that dark yeast extract born in Burton-upon-Trent in 1902, then layered crisp lettuce on top for coolness and crunch. The contrast was the whole point. Salt and freshness, dark and light, the intensity of the spread tamed by the water-crisp leaves. During both wars, Marmite was issued to troops and prized for its vitamins, and the habit of the thin scrape carried into peacetime, when a small jar cost around 9p and lasted months. Children learned early which side of the divide they stood on. School lunchboxes across the country carried these sandwiches into the 1970s, the lettuce keeping everything from becoming overwhelming. The spread survives, famously. But the careful old-fashioned pairing with lettuce, the sandwich your nan made without asking, has largely slipped away. Number 17. The sardine and tomato sandwich brought the sea to landlocked kitchens for the price of a tin. Housewives drained sardines, mashed them with a fork against a slice of tomato, added a shake of vinegar or a squeeze from the plastic lemon and spread the mixture onto buttered bread. In the 1950s, a tin of sardines cost less than a shilling and delivered more nourishment than almost anything else in the shop, rich in oil and protein when fresh fish was a luxury. The smell announced itself the moment the tin key turned, filling the kitchen and clinging to the curtains. Children wrinkled their noses, fathers declared it proper food, doctors praised the oil, and mothers praised the price. These sandwiches fueled Saturday teas and Sunday evening suppers in front of the wireless for decades. But the tin key generation aged, tuna arrived with its milder manners, and the sardine sandwich swam quietly out of British life. Number 16. The corned beef and piccalilli doorstep was the working man's banquet pressed between 2-inch-thick slices. Corned beef, shipped in from Argentina in those blue tins with the famous key, was sliced thick and laid on bread cut generously enough to earn the name doorstep. Then came the piccalilli, that violent yellow mustard pickle studded with cauliflower and onion, spooned on until it dripped. The combination was salt against sharpness, dense meat against crunching pickle, and it powered men through shifts in docks, pits, and factories across Britain. In the early 1950s, tinned corned beef filled the gap that rationing left, with hundreds of thousands of tons arriving each year. Wives made these sandwiches at dawn and wrapped them in yesterday's newspaper. Oral histories recall the tin key snapping, the curved slices, the yellow-stained fingers. Chilled ham in plastic packets killed the doorstep, and the great yellow sandwich faded with the industries it fed. Number 15, the Spam sandwich, carried a generation through austerity and became the punchline that fed a nation. The pink tinned luncheon meat arrived from America during the war and simply never left, sitting in British larders as insurance against empty days. Housewives sliced it thin and laid it on margarined bread, sometimes with a smear of mustard, sometimes fried first until the edges crisped and browned. Cold, it was dense and salty. Fried, it was almost glorious. In 1953, tinned luncheon meat appeared in millions of homes every single week, cheap, safe, and endlessly reliable when fresh meat was still on the ration. Children took Spam sandwiches to school so often that the word itself became a joke, and comedians made careers out of it. But the laughter did the damage. As prosperity arrived, Spam became shorthand for making do, and nobody wanted to admit to making do anymore. The sandwich vanished into embarrassment, remembered with more affection than anyone expected. Number 14, the egg and cress sandwich, made with salad cream rather than anything fancy, was the polite centerpiece of every British occasion. Housewives boiled eggs hard, mashed them with a fork and a spoonful of salad cream, seasoned with white pepper, then folded in mustard cress snipped fresh from a punnet on the windowsill. Children grew that cress themselves on damp cotton wool at school, watching the seeds sprout in days, and there was quiet pride in eating something you had grown. Eggs came off the ration in 1953, and the sandwich bloomed across the decade, appearing at every wedding, wake, and Women's Institute meeting, cut into quarters with the crusts removed only for company. The filling was creamy, sharp, and faintly peppery from the cress. Supermarket versions survive in plastic triangles, but they are pale ghosts. The windowsill cress, the salad cream, the ceremony of the occasion sandwich, all of that has gone. Number 13, the pressed tongue sandwich brought butcher's craft to the tea table in thin pink slices. Ox tongue was simmered for hours, peeled while warm, pressed under weights overnight, and sold by the quarter pound at every butcher and grocer in the land. Laid on buttered bread with a scrape of mustard, it delivered a rich, dense, beefy flavour, unlike anything else, silky where ham was firm, deep where chicken was plain. In the mid-1950s, pressed tongue was considered slightly posh, the sandwich you made when the vicar called, or when Sunday tea needed elevating. Children eyed it with suspicion once they learned what it was. Adults ate it with quiet relish and a strong cup of tea. Oral histories recall the gleaming domed tins and the butcher slicing it whisper-thin. But tongue could not survive the supermarket squeamish. The word alone doomed it on a plastic label, and one of Britain's finest sandwich meats simply disappeared. Number 12, the Brawn sandwich, asked more courage of its eaters than anything else at the table. Brawn, the meat from a pig's head, slow-simmered, shredded, and set in its own amber jelly, was sliced cold and laid thick on bread with a sharp dab of mustard or a splash of vinegar. It trembled slightly on the plate. It looked like nothing you would choose, and it tasted rich, deeply porky, and strangely wonderful. In the early 1950s, brawn sold for a few pence a wedge at butcher counters across Britain, the ultimate proof that a thrifty nation wasted nothing, not even the head. Grandfathers ate brawn sandwiches with genuine pleasure, while grandchildren watched in horror from across the table. Oral histories recall the pig's head simmering on the stove and the pride in a jelly that set firm. Supermarkets wanted nothing to do with it, the butchers who made it closed, and the bravest sandwich in Britain slipped into memory. Number 11, the condensed milk sandwich, was pure sweetness engineered from a tin and a slice of bread. Mothers punctured a tin of Nestle condensed milk and poured the thick, glossy syrup straight onto buttered white bread, where it soaked slowly into the crumb and dripped from the crusts if you were not quick. The taste was caramel sweet, dense, and almost overwhelming, a pudding disguised as a sandwich. During rationing, condensed milk stretched the sugar allowance further than almost anything else, and the habit outlived the ration books by decades. A tin cost around 9p in the mid-1950s and lived in the larder as a standing promise. Children were granted these sandwiches on birthdays, after grazed knees, or on the last day of school, and diaries from the era record them as the height of luxury. The tin survives for baking, but the sandwich, that gloriously excessive treat, belongs entirely to the past. Number 10. The toast sandwich. Sounds like a joke until you learn that Mrs. Beeton herself put it in print in 1861. A slice of bread was toasted crisp, seasoned with salt and pepper, then placed between two slices of fresh buttered bread. Bread inside bread. It was designed as invalid food, cheap nourishment for the unwell, and it survived in poor households for a century afterward because it delivered warmth, crunch, and comfort for the price of a loaf's 3 slices. The pleasure was entirely in the texture, the shattering crispness of the hot toast against the soft, cool bread around it. Grandmothers made toast sandwiches for children homesick from school well into the 1960s, buttering generously and cutting them into soldiers. In 2011, food scientists calculated it might be Britain's cheapest meal, and newspapers treated it as a curiosity. But for a generation raised on thrift, it was never a curiosity. It was Tuesday. Number 9. The lard and salt sandwich marks the hardest edge of British hunger, a sandwich stripped to its absolute essentials. When even dripping had run out and payday was days away, mothers spread plain lard across bread and shook salt over the top. And that was tea. Lard cost pennies a pound in the early 1950s, the cheapest fat in the shop, and it filled a working stomach like nothing else. The taste was mild, faintly porky, and utterly dependent on that scatter of salt to bring it alive. Diaries from mining villages and mill towns record lard sandwiches eaten without complaint, because complaint changed nothing, and the alternative was going without. Children raised on them grew into adults who never quite trusted an empty larder again. Nobody mourns the lard sandwich exactly. But those who ate them remember precisely what they meant. And that memory of hunger held at bay by pennies deserves its place on this list. Number 8. The peas pudding and ham stotty was Tyneside pressed into a single glorious handful. The stotty, that dense, flat, chewy bread baked on the oven floor across the northeast, was split and spread thick with peas pudding, the smooth golden paste of split peas boiled with a ham bone, then layered with shavings of boiled ham. In 1962, market stalls across Newcastle sold peas pudding hot by the ladleful, and no self-respecting stotty went without it. The combination was earthy, salty, soft, and dense, a sandwich that could carry a shipyard worker through to the evening whistle. Children were sent to the shop for a quarter of ham and a tub of peas pudding, reciting the order all the way. Oral histories recall the smell of the boiling pot seeping into stone walls. The stotty survives in pockets of Tyneside pride, but beyond the northeast, this magnificent sandwich never stood a chance against the National Chill Cabinet. Number 7. The haslet sandwich carried the taste of Lincolnshire in every thick-cut slice. Haslet, that loaf of seasoned pork and sage baked until fragrant, was the pride of East Midlands butchers, sold cold by the quarter pound for less than 9p in the 1950s. Sliced onto buttered bread with a smear of English mustard or a spoonful of pickle, it delivered a herbal, savoury depth that mass-produced ham could never touch. Children raced to the butcher's counter, hoping for the end slice, darker and more intensely seasoned than the middle. Wives wrapped haslet sandwiches for husbands cycling to work, and the smell of sage escaped the paper long before dinner time. Every butcher guarded his own blend of seasoning, which meant every village tasted slightly different. But haslet could not travel, could not be standardized, and could not survive the closure of the independent butchers who made it. The sandwich faded with the counters that built it. Number 6. The scraps butty was the free feast that chip shop children never forgot. Scraps, the crispy shards of batter that broke away from the fish in the fryer, were shoveled into bags and handed over for nothing, or a penny at most, at chippies across the north. Piled onto a buttered bap and drowned in salt and malt vinegar, they became a sandwich of pure crunch, hot fat, and vinegar sharpness that cost less than anything else on the board. In the 1950s and 60s, children queued at the counter on Friday nights, asking for scraps with the confidence of paying customers, and most friars obliged with a smile. The butty crackled with every bite, the vinegar soaking through the bread, while the batter somehow stayed crisp. Oral histories recall the newspaper wrapping, the steamed-up windows, the walk home in the cold. As chippies closed in their thousands, the scraps butty, Britain's cheapest luxury, quietly went with them. Number 5, the cheese and raw onion doorstep was the ploughman's lunch before anyone thought to charge for it in a pub. Thick slices of crumbly cheddar or Lancashire were laid on doorstep bread with rings of raw onion, a scrape of butter, and nothing else except perhaps a splash of vinegar or a spoonful of piccalilli. The bite was ferocious. The onion burned, the cheese crumbled, and together they made a sandwich that announced itself on your breath for the rest of the day. Farm labourers and factory workers ate these in their millions, wrapped in cloth and carried in jacket pockets, because cheese was protein and onion was flavour, and both were cheap. In 1954, cheese finally came off the ration, and the doorstep grew thicker in celebration. Wives complained about the smell. Husbands ate them anyway. Milder onions, sliced bread, and polite modern lunches killed the doorstep, and British sandwiches lost their loudest voice. Number 4, the brown sauce piece, proved that a sandwich needs nothing but bread, butter, and attitude. Across Scotland and the north of England, a piece meant a slice of bread, and a sauce piece meant that slice buttered and striped with HP, or Daddy's brown sauce, folded and eaten standing up. That was the whole recipe. The sauce, tangy with tamarind and vinegar, soaked into the butter and turned plain bread into something sharp, sweet, and strangely complete. In homes where the end of the week meant an empty larder, the sauce piece filled the gap between dinner and hope. A bottle of HP cost around £1 in the mid-1950s and lasted for weeks if the children could be kept away from it. Diaries record sauce pieces eaten after school, after football, after everything. It was never served to guests and never mentioned in cookbooks. It simply fed Britain quietly for 50 years, then vanished without anyone noticing. Number 3. The jam butty was childhood itself pressed between 2 slices of white bread. Mothers spread margarine, then a thin layer of jam, red and anonymous, from a £2 jar that cost around £1.06 in the 1950s and was expected to last the month. The corners were pressed together, the sandwich was handed over, and children ran back out to play with jam already on their chins. During rationing, jam had its own allowance, and the butty was often the only sweetness in a child's entire day. Whole streets of children ate jam butties on doorsteps in the summer holidays, comparing whose mother spread thickest. Wasps were fought off, crusts were debated. Oral histories recall the smell of bread and the sticky ceremony of the jar being scraped clean with the last of the butter knife. The jam survives, of course, but the butty as an institution, as the default currency of childhood, has gone. Number 2, the treacle sandwich poured a little liquid gold over the hardest of times. Housewives kept a tin of Lyle's golden syrup at the back of the pantry, the green and gold tin that Ministry of Food advertisements once called the sunshine in a tin, and on cold afternoons they drizzled it thick over buttered bread. The syrup soaked into the crumb and dripped through the fingers, sweet, sticky, and warming in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. In the leanest years, a treacle sandwich was pudding, reward and consolation all at once, costing a fraction of anything from the sweet shop. Children learned to eat them leaning forward over the plate, catching the drips. Some households used black treacle instead, darker and almost bitter, and defended it fiercely. Diaries from the era record treacle sandwiches handed out after winter walks and bath nights. The tin still sits in cupboards today. The sandwich almost never leaves it. And finally, in first place, the Mucky fat butty crowned the tables of working Britain as the sandwich that meant more than any other. Mucky fat was beef dripping, but not the clean white top layer. It was the dark jellied sediment at the bottom of the dripping bowl, thick with the concentrated juices of the Sunday roast, and it was spread onto thick bread with a generous shake of salt. Across Yorkshire, Lancashire, and the mining valleys, this was the taste of the whole week's cooking distilled into one bite, beefy, savoury, and impossibly deep. In the early 1950s, when a joint cost precious shillings, The dripping bowl was treasure, and children queued for the bottom scrapings. Fathers came home from pits and foundries to mucky fat butties and sweet tea, and swore no meal ever matched them. Oral histories recall the bowl on the cold shelf, the fights over the dark jelly, and the unwritten rule that the youngest got the first slice. Then came the health campaigns of the 1970s, and dripping became the villain overnight. Bowls were emptied, habits were broken, and the king of British sandwiches was quietly dethroned, though those who tasted it never truly forgot. Chefs have now rediscovered dripping and put it on fashionable menus at fashionable prices. Your grandmother could have told them. She always knew. From the humble salad cream sandwich that opened our list to the mighty mucky fat butty at the very top, these 25 forgotten sandwiches tell the story of a Britain that fed itself with ingenuity, thrift, and 2 slices of bread. Some, like the Lard sandwich and the toast sandwich, mark the sharp edge of real hunger. Others, like the sugar butty and the Treacle sandwich, prove that sweetness could always be conjured from almost nothing. If one of these just brought back a memory, tell us in the comments which sandwich your family made, because every one of these deserves to be remembered by somebody. Which one would you still eat today? Until next time, keep the kettle on.